DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion. You probably have realized that this was part of a huge argument globally just recently, and we need to talk about the facts instead of emotionally led ideologies here. I received a ton of emails after the inauguration of Donald Trump, mostly due to the fact that he now aims to stop DEI programs and already has put this in place, and some organizations unfortunately followed. But we now received emails where people ask, is there scientific evidence if DEI training actually pays off? And what I did, since I received this enormous amount of emails about the topic, I did the research, looked into studies. Is there any proof if DEI actually works or not? Let's look at the situation right here. We all want to have fair deals when we are at work or in life. We all want to be dealt with fairly. We know that society has changed a lot since the 60s, 70s, 80s. We have more diversity. However, we also have more arguments about the whole thing, how to implement it, and also some people even claim, should we have quotas or not? And then the whole argument usually escalates and the room explodes. Especially DEI training is targeted at the moment by different political groups, from Donald Trump to Nigel Farage to others, usually far right-wing political groups. Of course, I have to say, as an openly gay man, I'm part of the LGBTQIA plus community, so I'm actively now targeted, also affected by this issue. However, we want to get away from my personal story here. We need to look at the facts. What does science say? How should modern organizations react to the ongoing discussion we have about DEI? So first, of course, we have to talk about the definition. Diversity means that you have different kind of people, different kind of aspects in your organization. I give you a very simple example. Let's say you sell pens, and you sell pens in the UK. And then you probably know how to sell pens in the UK. You have shops where people buy pens, or you can buy them online. You know how people actually shop. When you now say, hey, you want to open up to sell pens to larger markets, so for example, huge markets such as in the US or in India or in China. And when you now look in the US and you are from the UK, you probably know that they have a quite similar culture, how they buy and use pens and which context usually sell them. Do you know that in India? Do you know this in China? And you most likely will now say, well, we could ask experts who are from China or from India. Exactly. And that is what you do. You reach out to a diverse audience by having diverse staff in your organization. Equity means that you have fairness in your organization. We all want to be dealt with fairly, as I already said. And inclusion simply means that no one is left behind just due to the fact how they are. Most people say, oh, inclusion, you mean wheelchair things? So first, don't say it that way. And second, it's not only about people who have certain limitations in their life. So inclusion means not leaving anyone behind just due to the fact how they are and things they cannot change. And of course, when we now look into scientific evidence, and this is the main part of this podcast today, the first question I always put this to the front because I know that no one likes to ask it and it shouldn't be the number one motivation. But as soon as the doors close and boards ask me as a consultant, does it actually pay off? People, of course, know that it is not the most brilliant moment when you are a manager or an executive when you say, hey, what about human rights? Do they actually pay off? So when you talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, asking does it pay off is, of course, not the nicest way to approach it. It shouldn't be the number one way. However, we all know that this is how boards react first. When you say something pays off, it's highly likely they do it. When they say it doesn't pay off, they most likely will not do it. When you look into financial results, McKinsey in a study in the year 2020 published that as soon as you have gender diversity in your organization, you on average have 25%, 1/4 more profit. If you add ethnic and cultural diversity to the mix, you have 36% more profit. So that's 1/4 to 1/3 more profit. It pays off royally, scientifically proven. The Credit Suisse, the Swiss bank in 2016 already published that when you in an organization only have one woman on the board, and we're of course now here still talking in the binary gender model. And by the way, yes, there are more than two genders. Donald Trump said they are only two by decree or executive order. Fortunately, science is free and science doesn't care about what someone with limited or no knowledge on the matter says. Fortunately, science is not bound to executive orders. Greetings go out to Mr. Trump and their supporters, or however you want to call these people. So when you only have one woman on the board or in senior executive leadership, you have a higher return on equity in your organization. The Boston Consulting Group in 2018 published that diversity in management, as soon as you are above the average, I'm not talking about being the market leader. I'm not talking about being the number one in your region or in the country or in the world. I'm not talking about being on the frontier, the number one person walking to the very front. No, I'm talking about when you only have diversity in management, when you are above the average, you have 19% more innovation revenue. Innovation revenue means that people have new ideas, new products, bring them to the market, and they actually work, and it actually pays off. 19%. So when we look into numbers, from gender diversity, 1/4 more profit, to ethnical cultural diversity, 36% more profit, to having only just one woman on the board, having a higher return on equity, diversity in management being only above the average, plus 19% innovation revenue, it pays off royally. And there is no discussion about that. If anyone says it doesn't pay off, that's a straightforward lie. However, that's not the end of the whole story. When we now look into innovation and problem solving, Harvard Business Review in 2017 published that diverse teams are better at problem solving, which, by the way, shouldn't be too surprising when you have more different points of view. And I just talked about that. When you say, hey, how do we sell pens to China or India? You most likely should ask diverse teams with people from China or India, so you solve that problem in a better way. The Scientific American in 2014 published that innovation and critical thinking in diverse groups is better because groupthink gets disrupted. You know, groupthink, as soon as people have a certain opinion, it's quite hard to get through to them or just to bring them to any kind of different approach. And I just give you a very simple idea. Volkswagen. I'm pretty sure that someone, when this group thing happened where they said, oh, we should put this, this little thing in there so we meet the emission goals. And meeting the emission goals, of course, is important, but not in the way they did it because it was fraudulent. I'm pretty sure someone said, well, I think what you do is criminal. And what happened was someone poorly said, shut up, we do it this way. Disrupting groupthink is difficult. However, it happens more often, and you also have more innovation, more critical thinking in diverse groups. Diversity brings you to better solution. The Journal of Applied Psychology in 2017 published that diverse teams show a higher creativity, bring more ideas to the table because of cognitive differences, and that moves your product cycle, your innovation, your profitability forward. So when you solve problems better, when you have better critical thinking and more innovation and you have more creativity, all that influences, of course, the financial results of your organization. But it doesn't end there. Let's look into talent acquisition, talent development, talent retainment. And when you now think of the talent situation in the market, you most likely will say, well, there is a shortage of talent, I think. So it's quite a shortage of talent, quite a shortage of workforce. So is DEI important here? Isn't that people just don't like it, they're a bit sick of it, or someone is going to shout the word woke somewhere from the side? We get to that word, by the way, in a minute. Glassdoor in 2020, you probably know Glassdoor is one of the largest platforms to evaluate employers. 76% of all talent, that's published in 2020 by Glassdoor in one of their studies. 76% of talents see DEI as a critical factor, see diversity, equity, and inclusion as a critical factor when looking for a job. Which means when you kill DEI off your programs, people will consider you the second choice on the job market, and they will only go for you when their first choice didn't hire them, and you probably do not want to be the second choice. Deloitte in 2019 also published and has proven in a study that you have 22% less turnover in DEI-driven organization and DEI practicing organization. You save 1/5 of your recruiting costs with less turnover. The Society for Human Research Management, SHRM, in 2019 published that DEI programs lead to more engagement. More engagement means less absenteeism, so people are there more, and that again leads to more productivity. Having more productivity, getting back to what we talked about first, again leads to better financial results. So to put it mildly and very politely, there is an unambiguously clear global scientific evidence on DEI programs working. MIT Sloan, that's the business school of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, one of the top 10 universities in the world. The MIT Sloan published in 2020 that as soon as you have transparent promotional procedures, there is more loyalty and more trust from your staff towards managers and executives. Of course, now some people say, well, Many organizations don't have transparent promotional procedures. Someone gets promoted and you wonder why. And of course, then rumors start where you think, well, maybe someone just got promoted to meet their diversity goals. And of course, that shouldn't be the case. We fully agree here. You need to be fully transparent. When someone says, I wanted to be promoted, someone else was, why did you pick them, not me? You have to deliver proof and evidence. And I know that many organizations do not deliver on that promise, so please start changing that today. You're harming the DEI approach when you become non-transparent on the matter. Stanford in 2019 published that psychological safety also goes up and is actually existent as soon as you practice DEI programs. More ideas and also criticism will be mentioned without fear of immediate negative consequences. And again, getting back to Volkswagen, as you know, with my charming accent, you can probably hear I am German. So someone at Volkswagen will have said, look, what we do here with this thing to meet the emission goals that we build in there, this little thing, I think that's criminal, and probably faced negative consequences from that. Psychological safety, by the way, again, leads to more trust. People stay longer, are more... and it again plays into the financial results of your organization, which is, by the way, why, because you probably heard now, why had this and that organization, some organization, even some large organization under the pressure of Donald Trump now through DEI programs under the bus. And that shows that their leaders and their organizations never truly cared. Costco, one of the largest retailers worldwide, their shareholders, and let's face it, shareholders are usually in for the return on invest. They are not in to say, hey, we are here for the people and that they all feel great. They put money on the table and they want to have a higher return, a dividend, stone cold cash on the table. That's what they want at the end of the year. The shareholders of Costco voted for keeping the DEI program in the organization active because it is so obvious that it pays off. So just summing up the evidence here, if you say DEI programs are not needed or they do not pay off, it's either you're not informed or it's a straightforward lie or both. There's not a single point of evidence saying that DEI programs do not work. They work, and they work tremendously well, and you make more profit as soon as you have DEI programs in place. Now, of course, some people say, well, how do you implement the whole thing? Very important here is don't go for the webinar that people have to watch on the side with a sandwich in their hand during their lunch break. That doesn't get you anywhere. Also, do not do anything where someone who has no clue read a book and suddenly steps up in front of a group and says, I'm now your DEI trainer. Don't do that. You need professionally educated people on the matter. That does not necessarily mean you need to take someone from a DEI background or someone who was affected by DEI, either inclusion or exclusion in their history. However, it helps when they were. They probably, as the group that was affected by the whole thing, can tell you more on the matter than others could who only know it from a certain distance. You need professionally educated people. They may or may not be affected by DEI by themselves. However, it helps when they are part of certain groups, communities that can relate to the matter. Very important here is no good DEI program starts with blaming people. You do not start with, you did it all wrong in the past. You do not start with finger pointing, and you do not start with, you sitting here are the problem and you were the problem for the last 20 years. Because no one will listen to that. So when you have professionally trained people, be sure that they have a positive mindset toward, positive idea, positive approach to having the whole program implemented in your organization. The leading aspect of any DEI program is always scientific evidence, which needs to be relevant to real-world practice. And if people who train you or coach you or mentor you in the matter are a bit entertaining, bit good, easy to listen to, that's also quite helpful. So take people who are methodologically and didactically qualified, but also who are people you like to listen to and can listen to. Also, you have to add, there must be a pragmatic implementation. Talking about scientific concepts is nice, and it's also helpful to understand the matter on a higher level. However, then you have to bring it down to what do we do in today's workplace from now? What are we going to change from here? Summing all this together, when you ignore scientific evidence or you simply have a go against the facts, you disqualify yourself as a person and as a leader. No one will follow you for a good reason. When you, in your fact-free despair and in your maximum of non-informed self-promotion, self-display or ego, call it as you like, scream around the world, it's all woke. The only thing you do is you put not only negativity into the workplace. Also, we simply have to say nothing smart was ever said when the word woke was used as a pejorative. So be aware of that. Also, by the way, you basically declare intellectual bankruptcy when you shout around the world woke. So you do not want to be one of these people. DEI affects all of us because it can quickly go the wrong way. So, for example, maybe you remember when someone suddenly says, "Oh, it's an old white man." Old white man and excluding people based on being an old white man doesn't help anyone as well. So you see, DEI programs help you that this doesn't happen as well. DEI programs affect absolutely anyone. And that's why they are so important. Anyone who has a go against DEI programs, and I'm speaking here from a scientific point of view, anyone who has a go against DEI programs harms organization and people, and you do it deliberately, which disqualifies you as a person, as a leader, and as someone who can be tolerated to stay within the organization. I need to be that unambiguously clear. So when you now say, we have to start with it or we have to continue, go for it, do it right now, make it practical, and put it in place. The quicker the better, because it shouldn't be the number one motivation. However, it's not only great for innovation or problem solving, talent acquisition or retainment. It's also, of course, great when you put science into practice. It also, and that shouldn't be the number one motivation, but it is important, it also pays off royally for your organization. I wish you all the best implementing it from now on, or keep going as you are. And when you now say, whoa, that was, I think we have to do something in my organization, feel free to text me, feel free to email me. In the show notes of this podcast, you find my email address, nb@nb-networks.com. You find it below the podcast in the show notes. You also find my LinkedIn there. Feel free to connect with me on there. You also find my website, nb-networks.biz, right there. So feel free to contact me there. You also find the transcript of this podcast exactly there. The second aspect, which I always mention, is we have live sessions. So when you go to expert.nb-networks.com, feel free to sign up there with your email address. You only receive one email every Wednesday morning. And what you get there is, first, access to every single article ever published, free access also to every podcast I ever made. So no paywall, no nothing. And of course, you find the date and the time for the next live session. And also you find the direct link to join that session. I'm looking forward to seeing you there. However, the third aspect is always the most important one. Apply what you heard in this podcast, because only when you apply what you heard here, you will see the positive aspects that you obviously want to see in your organization. I wish you all the best implementing this. If you need any kind of help, feel free to contact me. I'm available 24/7 and I answer any message within 24 hours or less. Looking forward to hearing from you. All the best implementing what you heard today in this podcast. Let's stay in touch. And at the end of this podcast, there's only one thing left for me to say. Thank you very much for your time.